All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in. This is our second installment in this year's BDPA and NSBE From Idea to Lunch virtual speaker series. So if you're not one of the members of the FI2L, as we're calling it, cycle, this time around, From Idea to Lunch is a combined effort between BDPA, Black Data Processing Associates, and NSBE, a National Society of Black Engineers, to provide resources, education, and content around creating, building, and sustaining successful businesses. So we have 7 people who have signed up for this year's FI2L program with either new businesses or new business ideas, and they will be competing in our second annual FI2L pitch competition at the National BDPA Conference in Atlanta in August. At the Westin Peachtree Plaza. So I hope you all go to conference.bdpa.org, register for BDPA Con 23. We hope to see you there. It's going to be a great time. But with that being said, I would like to bring our speaker to you for today, Ms. Lissette Arias, who will introduce herself in her own way. Please bear with her. She is having some internet challenges today because her provider decided it was time to have an outage when we were getting ready for our session. So we'll get through this. We know how technology works. But Lissette, I'll let you introduce yourself and give some opening words, and I'll get your presentation pulled up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So today we're going to be speaking about building a sustainable business. And although we don't really know how sustainable you are until you launch it, I can show you how to build a business in a sustainable way with true sustainability built right into the foundation of your business. Next slide, please. So a little bit about me. My name is Lissette Arias. I work at Platform Venture Studio, and I'm partner and chief design officer there. I'm honored to be here and to spend the rest of this hour sharing what I know in the many years of doing what I do, and also getting to know you guys a little bit more by way of the Q&A portion after the presentation. So what do I currently do? Well, being that we are a startup ourselves, I wear many hats. Currently, I head UXR, UX research, design ops, product strategy, project management, project management, and low-code development. I feel like I have one of the best jobs because I get to work hand in hand with founders in creating their startups. And something that I'm very proud of is most recently graduating summa cum laude in ethnic studies, which is a lens through which I see everything that we do. Next slide, please. So let's jump right in and talk about building a sustainable business. Because we have limited time, I figure the areas we can talk about are the highlights will be defining sustainability and why that's good for business, discovery stage, the MVP, measuring performance, and then your growth and scale stage. Next slide, please. So starting with sustainability, high level, sustainability always means better for the planet, better for people, and better for the long-term health of your business and the global economy. Next slide. But what does that mean for your business? Well, in business, sustainability refers to doing business without negatively impacting the environment, community, or society. That's sort of the baseline. But we believe in taking that one step further. We have to do better than just do no harm. The goal of a sustainable business strategy is not just to be a sustainable business in the way that a business is successful, but to make a positive impact in at least one of those areas. You have to want to move the needle forward. Next slide. So what you want to do is do good, right? You want to do good for the environment or good for society, and do well, earn revenue. You want to be profitable so you can continue doing more good. Well, the good news is that doing good is good business, right? Incorporating ESG principles into your operation of your startup and decision-making process, you will increase your chances of success while also reducing risks. So what are some of those benefits that your startup can have from the very beginning? You're more likely to build a positive reputation with your audience and have a really positive brand image. You'll have more brand loyalty, customer trust, and something that is very good for sustainability is a positive word of mouth, which is key to sustainable growth that will help drive your business. You'll also attract top talent. We know that today, good talent and people who are great at what they do, they want to know that their work is meaningful and that a company has sustainability at heart. You'll also mitigate risks, right? Like supply chain vulnerabilities or compliance issues, or even reputational risks. All of those things help you avoid disruptions and legal issues, which are very costly. What's really cool about ESG thinking is that it can foster creativity and inspire new products or services, because now you're thinking through a new mindset. You have a different lens that you're looking at things through. So this usually helps startup teams explore business models that generate not just financial returns, but incorporates positive societal impact. And now I like to point something out that might be obvious or a given or maybe just dismissed, but it shouldn't be. I think everyone here right now, we all have an advantage. Many of us have intimate knowledge of the needs of entire demographics who are far too often underserved and underrepresented in tech and tech solutions and in products. We have firsthand experience of many needs that exist in our communities right now that are yet to be served. We know the workarounds and we know what could be better if something was designed with us in mind. So I say use that, right? Stay true to that and let that be part of your startup strategy from an early stage. Next slide, please. Something that's important and a key part of a sustainable business is tracking and measuring those environmental goals or social impact. You want to set goals and targets so you can improve that performance and then regularly report on that progress. It's by monitoring those key performance indicators that are related to sustainability that you'll find areas for improvement. You can show that you are an organization that is accountable, transparent, and you can communicate that to your stakeholders, your investors, and also your users. So let's get on with this and build something meaningful. Next slide. Where do we start? Discovery. This is the part where you're going to define a sustainable product or service that people will love. And here I'll share some high-level key activities that we do at the studio. Next slide, please. So everything starts and ends with the user. That's really the discovery stage. In the discovery, which is where you do market and user research, that's one of the most critical times that you invest in building your company. What you do here will guide everything you do. Some of the goals for this stage are to build empathy by getting to know your users deeply. You'll validate or invalidate unmet needs or critical pain points, along with any solutions that you might have thought of before you entered this stage. And you'll also discover who your target audience is and who that unique customer segment is that you will serve with your solution. During this stage, you may want to partner with a user experience researcher, or you can do the work yourself as a founder. At the studio, we like to encourage a collaborative approach because we believe that there's a lot of value that you as a founder can gain by connecting and talking directly with your future audience or your future users. But what's most important is to go into this stage with an open mind. And although it's very hard, try to leave all of your assumptions and ideas and everything you thought you knew behind and go into it with an open mind and with a mind of curiosity. Because what happens is if you bring those preconceived notions or solutions too early, it may actually cloud your ability to make really meaningful discoveries. During this stage, some of the methods that we use are ethnography. Essentially, it's watching and observing your users in their day-to-day. We also do user interviews, and we use surveys and polls. There are a lot of tools out there. You might have seen some of these, like user testing, user Zoom. Some are more affordable than others. Some are completely free. And even actually, SurveyMonkey has a service that you can pay for responses, so you can actually get a number of very targeted audience to respond to your questions if you have surveys that you want to send out, which saves you a lot of time. It's really, really great. It keeps you from having to search for an audience. So by employing all of these methods, what you're doing is going beyond the surface level observations, right? And you're going to uncover deep insights into those potential customers. Next slide, please. Another activity that's part of the research and discovery stage, and it's in addition to competitive research, but it's not very spoken of very often, is trendscaping, right? I call it trendscaping. It's a trend analysis, right? So this trend analysis focuses on identifying and analyzing emerging patterns, changes, and shifts in consumer behavior, in market dynamics, or industry trends over time. It gives you this broad vision, or a broad view, if you will, of not just the space where you want to go, but all of the surrounding markets and any developments that are happening there. That helps you make informed business decisions, right? Right now, what are one of the biggest things happening is AI and ML, right? And this is a big trend, and you want to see how does that play into your business. So you want to understand and identify relationships and interactions and things that will influence your business and your solution. Ultimately, it helps you answer the question, why is now a good time to develop this solution or product, right? What are the trends? Or by the same token, what are some things that I should be aware of that may impact the success or the growth of my company? Next slide. So I kept the discovery stage super high level. There's a lot of things that we do, but ultimately the outputs, or the outcomes, I should say, are to have focus and direction, right? Just like a compass, it will guide the build of your MVP. By this point, you'll have a well-defined hypothesis statement. You'll have a list of those essential features and functionality that are going to solve a problem and bring value to a very specific set of users. A big thing is prioritization, right? Determining the order of importance of those features and what should be part of the MVP based on your users' needs, the market demand, and also the technical feasibility. And empathy, it cannot be emphasized more. Having a deep understanding of your target, that will always continue to inform all the decisions you make. And if you center around that, your business will always be sustainable. Next slide. Next slide, please. There we go. Now you're ready, right? MVP time. What does that mean? It's focus, focus, focus. This quote by Steve Jobs is excellent. It says, people think focus means saying yes to the things you gotta focus on, but it really means saying no to the 100 other ideas that there are. You have to pick carefully. Next slide. So MVP, what does MVP stand for? We know it stands for minimum viable product, but I kind of think we could call it also market validation product, because that's really the whole purpose of an MVP, right? It's to validate your assumptions, gather early feedback, test that market viability of a product in a very cost-effective and efficient manner, which is sustainable and non-wasteful. The goal is to build the most basic concept or version of your concept, test it, and if there are no valuable results, abandon it. That's what we mean by failing quickly and cheaply. You have to be okay with throwing an idea when you don't see any results, any positive results. Now, it's important to not confuse what an MVP is, unusable or unreliable. It needs to be functional, reliable, user, and even delightful, as you see in the graphic there, right? The expectations of consumers, especially if you're building a product or a service or an app for consumers, the expectations of consumers now are very high. They expect things to function, to be smooth, and to be clean, even in the design. And the only way that you're able to incorporate all of those layers in that pyramid is if you have a narrow scope for the functionality of your MVP. And all of those things came out of your user research, right, and discovery stage. So let's get to building. How do we do that? Next slide, please. Yes, the low code. As a startup founder, I'm sure you know that time, money, and resources are super limited. So what do? Well, we optimize for speed and efficiency. Your goal is to create and build a meaningful product and put that in the hands of the right users as quickly as possible to gather real world feedback and insights. And because timing is so critical, we say use any available technology out there to develop your MVP quickly and at a fraction of the cost and time of traditional engineering. For us, low-code development has become one of those incredible assets that we use to develop and bring all of our concepts to life in 6 weeks or less. We go fast. Now, I know for some people, low-code might be a little bit of a point of contention, but I think it's just because maybe there's some outdated knowledge. This doesn't replace or take away the need for full stack engineering at some point, but it's so perfect for MVPs because it's so fast. It allows you to be so fast. Bubble, right? Caspio, Webflow, Airtable. These are just some of the examples of the tools we use and platforms. And some have asked, well, what about the limitations and scalability of low code, right? Well, I'm here to tell you, we've yet to see the limits with any of our MVPs. And believe me, every sprint, we push bubble.io, for example, as far as we can. We've developed anything from a HIPAA compliant service in InsurTech to our most recent launch, which is an amazing CJIS compliant AI-powered e-discovery tool. Shout out to Ari, who's on the call. It's a tool for use in the criminal justice system that public defenders and DA offices will use. So I totally believe low code for the win when it comes to MVP. Next slide, please. What are some things you want to avoid? Obsessing too much in the planning, or anything that's keeping you from taking action, right? Which burns time. And then also making bad bets, right, on the wrong features. So an MVP launched will be the best business strategy any day, because you have a real life product and you're getting real life data. Sometimes confirmation bias can get the best of you, right? You go out to discover, but you're just trying to prove that your idea is going to work. Well, that's the wrong approach. And you're not going to see opportunities because you're so focused on what you think is the right solution. So try to avoid that. The hard thing is saying no for a lot of people. We like to say that every feature is a no and has to fight for a yes for it to be built. So if you keep that, it'll help you make smarter decisions and be very efficient with your build. And of course, when you're thinking of sustainability and the do good, right, for the world and for people, sometimes not having that foresight or accounting for ways that a product could be used to hurt people or the environment if put in the wrong hands. You have to think of all of the angles and ensure that you are preparing for that and making sure that you're not developing something that will hurt or add to the inequities, right, in the world. So these are things you definitely want to avoid with building your MVP. So now that you have your product, get it in people's hands and start measuring obsessively. Next slide, which takes us to measuring performance. I love this quote. It's sort of like a riddle. Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. So with the things that we can count, next slide, please. What should that be? Well, now you have your product out there, you have users coming in and trying it out. You want to focus on the most important metrics, and those should give you actionable insights. And you should be able to see the progression over time. So, like for example, focus on the metrics, provide actionable insights, demonstrate how they change over time. Those will help you have a dashboard that is very clear and not overwhelming. Some of the questions that you want to answer, for example, is our business healthy? Okay, what do you look for that? Look at your spend, right? Look at your NPS. What is your retention rate? You'll want to look at how efficient we are. How is our business doing? Okay, there are metrics that show you that. Look at your CAC, right? Your cost to acquire a customer and how fast you're getting that cost back. How is your funnel converting? That will tell you if you are spending your efforts in with the right people, with the right segments, in the right venues. Also, how fast are we moving, right? How are you performing with your North Star metric? How's your revenue or your order volume, for example? So this information is how you start testing measuring and tracking the performance of that hypothesis of what you thought that pain point was and how you're solving for it. So next slide. Now you've got some traction, right? Now you have data, you have people using it. And what I like to say is you've earned the right to go into the growth and scale mode. So next slide. Now that you do have validation, true validation that your product or service has value because people are using your MVP, you can now focus on expanding that customer base and focus on revenue, right? And operations. This can come too quickly because you still have to feel confident that your MVP, that your bet, right, that you made is actually useful and has value. And now that you're there, you can start scaling, right? You'll look at your focus now will go into your sales and marketing efforts. You might adjust your go-to-market strategy. You'll look at operations and infrastructure. How are we going to sustain our growing business, right? What are the smart hires to make? And who should be part of that founding team? Those are all guided by the needs of your business. And then you also want to have now, or now that you have data, positive, numbers and data to make a great story of your startup, you kick off fundraising efforts. With that data, that is super powerful, and it will tell a very strong story about why someone should invest in your sustainable business. You also want to scale that business model. What worked for your MVP or those metrics even will adapt, and you'll have to keep adapting and growing that and scaling how your business will be profitable. And always methodically iterate the product. Always use data and methodically through a system, test new things, drop things that are not performing or not helping you reach your goals. And next slide. So in summary, sustainability will run across the entire life cycle of the development of your MVP or your startup even. All of these processes that we went through, very high level, of course, will help you have a sustainable and user-centric startup quickly and really efficiently. So sustainability runs across you in the discovery phase. You were able to validate that pain point, a problem that you want to solve, and you figured out who the right people are. With that MVP in hand, you tested the market demand and you assessed that there was sufficient interest and a willingness to pay for the product or service. So you validated the product market fit, and you reduced the risk of investing too much time, resources in a product that may not meet customers' needs or expectations. You might have even tossed a few bad ideas early on. All of those are positive signs and that the process is working. In measuring performance, right? You have users, your data is keeping you honest. You're measuring key performance indicators and iterating on ideas that need improvement. And you're keeping that feedback loop active while testing and experimenting often. And finally, during the growth and scale, you are focused on accelerating growth and achieving sustainable and rapid expansion. So there you go. With that, we wrap up the crash course on building a sustainable business. And yeah, I think we can open it up to Q&A. I hope that was clear for everyone.
Hi, this is Van. Can I ask a question, if you don't mind?
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Hi, Lissette. Thanks so much. I have a few questions, but they were like all along the way. One of the questions I have is, what tools do you use to gather trendscaping?
That's a great question. There are a lot of services that we use, right? So third-party services that all they do is research and do data analysis. So you'll go, an example is like McKinsey, right? McKinsey has reports and they publish. A lot of this is actually free. You'd have to sign up, but give them your email and you'll get a bunch of reports. They come up with trends in different areas, and sustainability is one of their latest one is on all about sustainability. They have reports on consumer trends. One of the ones I was just looking at the other day was how they have a great report on how consumer trends changed, 8 areas that changed permanently as a result of the pandemic. So all of these things all this information is out there, and you don't have to do it yourself. That would be pretty impossible. And a lot of this is available for the public. There are paid sources sometimes, or white papers you can actually pay for or download. But yeah, a quick search for trends and market analysis and things like this will give you some reputable companies whose expertise is totally on this. So look for big research firms, analysis and business reporting type places, like in tech. There's specific ones for tech too.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks for your question.
I know we've had quite a few questions hit the chat, so I'm just scrolling back up. I think Nikisha first asked will we have access to this deck. Lissette, if you don't mind, I'll share the deck out with everyone who joined, if that's okay with you. We'll definitely have the recording available. So there goes your answer, Nikisha. We will share the deck out as well as the recording. It will be on our YouTube channel, National BDPA, and we'll send that link out.
Thank you.
Okay. No problem. So Dan, I know you just asked the question, but you had a question here about what tools do you use to gather trendscaping? Do you want to have her speak to that specifically?
Oh yeah, Lissette just answered that in terms of like
great.
market research companies. Thank you.
Okay, wanted to make sure. Okay, Justin, you're the next name I see in here. I know you had a few questions in the chat. Your first one was specific to the trucking industry, but you want to come off mute and ask your question or two?
Yeah, hey, how's everyone doing?
Hi, great, thank you.
No problem. So my question is, since I'm involved in the trucking industry, and my question to you is like, what can be done to solve the trucking industry challenges, and how do you teach sustainability in the trucking industry where like there are some employees that are not accustomed to change, and then that they want to change, but they're just struggling with the new environment, and like their volume is slow, like getting out the loads per week instead of rather than with an old company like Warner or Western Express or JB Hunt, where everything is just all in one cycle. But it's been a small company, small trucking company. We're just adapting to new changes where the volume got to be pretty intense, like a load a week. So I'm just trying to make it make sense to my drivers that had 10, 15 years experience, but just with one company, and transitioning to someone that's different, but also kissing it where I'm just keeping it short and simple.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You're in that space where we are actually actively developing a startup for the trucking industry, right? And so we started by, again, understanding the space, and the founder of that concept of that startup, he actually went in full ethnography mode, right? He actually is going on hauls and joining truckers and going with them and understanding all the ins and outs and their pain points and their challenges when they're hauling truckloads from one place to another. And so you got to get really deep in there and understand it. Then you look at what the drivers are, what are the motivations for them, and how can your business or your idea, right, help them, motivate them to adapt. And sometimes it's about talking one-on-one with them. That's a slower process, but at least that gets you, connecting and explaining something that might seem too tech heavy or something, right? You just break it down to what is most important to them and go off of there. What we do, or what we're trying to do in this case, is create a solution, create at the core of the business, make it have the solution that is going to benefit the truck driver. So this one in particular is about a relay system, right? So that helps the environment. It helps them be close to home. It helps them, be home every day, not be on the road for days at a time. So when you work from the user, your solution itself, your business opportunity, will directly benefit them. But takes at the beginning just getting on the same level and understanding them and talking their language, right? Not coming onto them like, hey, I'm from tech and I'm going to solve your problems. Like, that's never going to be something they like. And I don't think anyone would react positively that way. But the fact that we humble ourselves, right, to becoming like noobs, right? We don't know. We ask them to lead the way with showing us what their world is like. You start changing the conversation. It becomes a partnership, a collaboration at that point. And when they feel like they're a part of it, and these are your beta users, right? When you get beta users and you make them feel that they're a part of the innovation, that they're a part of the solution, adoption becomes so much easier because now they're bought in and they feel like they have sort of an ownership, right? Or like a sharing of this thing you're building. And so, yeah, a lot of people's skills come in at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense right there within that frame. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, cool. And good luck with that. I think we have so much opportunities in the trucking industry. You know, there's a lot of big things, big trends that might be, you know, coming up here with electric. So we're like electric, self-driving, you know, trucks, and, you know, but just in the process, right? It's an industry that hasn't had a lot of innovation or investment, if you will. And so it's ripe for breakthroughs right now. Yeah. And I'm excited that you're in that space. It's very cool. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question I saw was from Van again. It was around how do you prioritize features to avoid having a bloated MVP or roadmap? And Van, did that question get answered earlier for you as well?
Not yet, thank you. Okay,
so that's the question, Lissette. How do you prioritize features to avoid having a bloated MVP or roadmap?
Yeah. It starts with the pain point that you have identified as being the most critical. Right, it's the one where if it were a cut, it's the bleeding cut, right? It's not the one where it's just a scrape or something that doesn't really need big fixing. Whatever that one pain point you discovered as being at the core, the real unmet need, the features will be prioritized using that as your guide, right? So if you think of like a bullseye, or the center where it's red, if that would be the critical pain point, that's where you select just a few of those features that are important for that use case, for that user, and you put that at the core. There will be a lot of features that are supplementary to it, but those go on the outside circles or rings of the bullseye. So it requires, again, having that mentality of being open to discovering, real insights from your users and tying that into their biggest pain point. Of course, you also want to take in consideration who your competitors are and what they're doing. And you might find that some are solving for it. And you wonder, well, why are these people still suffering that pain point? We'll break that down and look at your competitor and what are they doing? Maybe they missed something that was critical in that process. And so users are not adopting that solution because something wasn't accounted for. And that's how you create your own like wedge into, providing a truly meaningful solution that people will adopt. But yeah, always start with your users.
Thanks a bunch.
You're welcome. Thanks for your question.
All right, Akil, I see you had a question in the chat. Did you want to come off mute and speak to it, or would you like me to ask it for you? I think Akil may not be able to speak, so I'll ask him on his behalf. So he said, how do you monetize your company's eclectic capabilities accurately and smartly to increase revenue building opportunities? How do you ensure that you are not giving away your unique capabilities for free?
I wish I had a little bit more context here. eclectic capabilities. Oh, if he's available, I'd love to hear him explain this question just a little bit more so I can understand what that means.
Akil, are you in a position to speak right now, Akil? Come off mute and speak.
Maybe not. I think I can answer maybe the latter, the second part of that, right? How do you ensure you're not giving away your unique capabilities for free? I'm assuming this is your startup, right? And I'm gonna guess a bit here and fill in for the lack of context, but I think sometimes there is a worry of, I'm gonna put my MVP out there and someone's gonna see it and now they're gonna steal it, or I'm giving away too much for free. I need people to pay me. You know, there's a lot of concerns around that, and some may be about the competitive space, and sometimes it's about your solution just, you know, having to be given away for free at first. I think there's a time and place for all of those approaches, right? With users and giving or sharing a product, you need bodies in there, right? So at the beginning, you're probably going to give free seats, you know, you're going to give away, in a way, give away the things that you worked for and that you've been, you know, really focused on and really investing so much time in. But that's because you need to learn first from them, and they don't know about your business yet. It's new. You have to gain their trust, and that starts with opening the door and letting folks try out your you know, your service or your product up to a certain point, right? Once you feel like you're confident and now you've polished that solution, you have improved it thanks to the data that you collected, which has to come from having users, then you can start creating different models for monetizing your offering, right? When it comes to competitors, it's just what it is, right? So you got to put it out there. It's hard to hide it. You shouldn't hide it. And we're very much at the studio, we're about being transparent and building the open. But if you're fast, efficient, then you have a little less to worry about, and use that to your advantage. Go fast, try to go faster than your competition, learn faster, make changes faster, iterate, pivot faster. And then eventually you're not gonna be looking back on your shoulder at, like, you know, who's there. You're just gonna be so focused and feeling right, your tempo and your speed, and feeling confident in that your solution is very unique to you. So that's what I can say for that. I hope that was somewhat helpful and that I filled in enough of the context to offer some thoughts there.
Okay, and we had another question from Justin asking about, are there any sustainability certifications or frameworks out there?
Yes, the first one that comes to mind is B Corp, right? That's one that is a standard in the sustainability space, and I would look into what it takes to submit and get that certification, right? I don't think it's necessarily difficult. You just have to do the work and say, you know, do I, you know, is my business in line with this? Am I, are my goals and my setup of the startup, you know, can I get that certification? What is the cost? Can I get sponsors, etc.? So there are many. That's, I would say, start with B Corp and then move down the list. There's, depending on where your business is, if it's consumer products, there are different ones, right? Like there's food, and there's, you know, like beauty, and it depends where you are, but there are organizations that will give you that legitimacy, right, and having that certification. And I think it's great to have that if you're going to go fundraise, right, to have those and say, yes, this is part of our core business. And like we mentioned, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there's a lot of money being invested in sustainable and ESG driven impact companies. So do it, do it. Find out what you need to do to get it, and try to get the one that makes most sense for your business and your business model and your market.
Yeah,
But that's a great idea.
Did you have anything to add there, Justin? Are you good? Okay, I see one back on mute. All right. I think Bolha, hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but let me know if I'm not. I saw you raise your hand earlier, so I'll give you the floor.
Hi, everyone. Lissette, thank you so much for a great presentation. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, but I think majority of them were asked already. So thank you for your answers. Related to pivoting and related to integration, or not integrating, or iterating several times. From your experience, have you seen, so there's focus and iterations, right? So you get a focus while you are trying to solve the issue and iterating things, right? You focus on one type of features, right? How many times usually from your experience people iterate, right? Like in the process, right? Or is a statistical number? I don't know if there is a statistical number until they get their best, I guess, assumptions or hypothesis done.
Yeah, are you saying like part of your MVP, within your MVP, the iterations that happen there?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are big and small, I think, levels of pivots and iterations. The small ones happen all the time. They happen as you're designing the UI. They happen as you're building it. It's a constant thing. It's almost a daily thing to iterate in small degrees. When the bigger pivots happen, it's usually led by data, by what you're observing. And sorry, I was looking at the comments here. And that is less common because it costs a little bit more time, resources, and development, right? Resources too. I don't have like a statistical number, but because our timelines are very short, right? Like we build it in 6 weeks, and then we have a few more weeks and sprints after that where we make pivots. Just super general, right? Generalization here. You might have 2 or 3 big-ish pivots, and you want to be, careful with that, especially if it's pivoting the core solution, because you have to make sure that you're basing it on enough statistically significant data, that you've had enough. And sometimes you don't have enough as a startup because your MVP is so small, people don't know about you, right? So you might have just a few, maybe under 50 users or something. So you have to be really selective with what those changes are going to be. Usually they're about supporting functionality, and those are what I would call medium-ish, right? Pivots, sometimes dropping them all together is what that's a great pivot, because then you can spend that on some other feature that you didn't have time to develop. But yeah, daily, you'll get small pivots all the time, and learnings, right? Because now you've got a whole team thinking through it, not just the founder. And those are great, right? So you have to be set up in your product development lifecycle to be super iterative and have a team that is lean and mean and fast, and it can,
flexible, right? Yeah.
It's super flexible. Yes. Once you launch and you're learning, that becomes more, you have to be more methodical of like, okay, did we gather the data? Is the data can we trust this data? And just kind of be intellectually honest with what you are seeing and how you're reading that data, and do it with your team, right? That way you're taking into account diverse mentalities, your user experience designer, maybe your business analyst, right? Like different people, your marketing team, like look at the data together and, make those decisions. But it doesn't happen as often if you've done a pretty good job in the discovery phase.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. I think Ari, you had something.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Oh, go ahead, Ari.
Yeah, Lissette, thank you again for this. This was I wish I had some of this prior to joining a platform. I was curious if you can share with the audience, like for platform, how can founders better position or prepare to speak with a venture studio like platform, or how can they better position themselves and their idea to receive funding? Because that's one of the challenging things for underrepresented groups is space, especially in the tech spaces. Often VCs and other funding organizations require you to have an MVP and revenue traction.
Yeah, and those are high demands, right? And a point where most haven't even had the privilege or the resources to do the work of building an MVP.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I think as part of the sourcing, right, of a studio, if we're talking about studio, they want to see grit and they want to see how scrappy a founder is. And that's an opportunity to show those qualities. And what I mean by that is, if you can't build it, that's okay. Nothing's stopping you from learning more, diving more into the research, getting to know your users, and coming to the table almost as an expert on the audience that you want to serve. That will speak volumes. And we saw how the tools that are out there for research, some are completely free. And yes, it's going to require time after your job, if you have a full-time job, right, to do these things, or a day in your weekend to have to follow or join or be with those potential users, right? But it's worth it. And that's the kind of attitude and like ethos that we would look at. And that the fact that you didn't have an MVP or growth or customer traction would not stop us, because you have shown your grit, which you need to have as a founder forever. And you've shown your passion for the user, because we are passionate about the users. And you've shown that you will do whatever you can with the resources that you have available to you. And that, like I said, that actually is even more meaningful for our studio than you coming here with a MVP or even a prototype, because we are still going to ask the same questions. How much do you know? How much did you learn about your users and their pain points? So it's kind of better. Use your time for the research, bring that to the table, and be that expert, and you'll wow, us from the very beginning. And I'll be rooting for you big time, because I'm all about the users. So.
And how should they present that? Like, that's I personally have attended a number of I participated in a number of accelerators and incubators for those who have amazing ideas that have not been fortunate enough to have gained insight through accelerators and incubators. How should they be presenting that market research to a studio like yours? Like, let's say they do all the research, how should they present that?
There are many ways, really. That's a bit of that person's preference, right? You could tell a very strong story and then add supporting facts, supporting data, right? It can be in the form of a presentation, right? Show the big stats, right? Show how many you spoke to, show that this is statistically significant, and that we should be listening and paying attention to you, because the data, the way that you're showing it very clearly doesn't lie, right? So a presentation's fine, a story is good. You can get creative with it if it's about creating a small video and walking through and showing your snapshots of how you interacted with your users, how you did that research. That speaks volumes too. So really it's very open and flexible. There's no like hard way of telling your story, but tell it in a compelling way that moves you, and always include the why you, right? Like why, because ultimately we're kind of investing in the founder. We have to believe in this founder, because ideas can shift, but shifting a founder and shaping it is not the easiest thing, right? So if you are passionate and this thing that you want to solve for is important to you, share that. Why is it important to you? Is it a personal thing? Did you experience this? All of that. And so it's very open. Just share everything that you learned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ari. Those are great questions, everyone. Thank you.
All right, well, that brings us to time. We want to be respectful of everyone. So thank you all for joining us. I put a link in the chat. I want to encourage all of you to register for the BDPA conference in August at the Westin Peachtree Plaza. That's conference.bdpa.org. Definitely hope to see you all there. For those of you who are participants in this cycle, we'll definitely be sharing the recording with you all here soon, but it'll be available on the National BDPA YouTube channel, which is National BDPA on YouTube. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll be in touch with you all soon as far as more to come with the cycle. But Lissette, thank you again for sharing with us today. This was informative and insightful. And we appreciate you taking the time to do this. This was definitely valuable for everyone. So thank you. And thank all of you for joining, whether you're in the program or not. I appreciate you all for coming through and getting the information and supporting what we have going on here. So with that being said, stay safe and we'll see you next time. I think our next series is around funding your business. So a topic that I'm sure everyone can appreciate. And that one will be July 13th, if memory serves me correctly. So we'll see you all soon.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.